So we are spending a very typical night in for ourselves in Vientiane, Laos tonight. And what does that consist of exactly? Well, consists of us being on our computers for a long time, and then me cooking, which I really like to do. And so we go to the grocery store pretty often. It's like a 20-minute walk to the supermarket, D-Mart that we go to. And there we can pick up things like chicken, and we usually get our produce a mix between there as well as like some produce vendors on the side of the road just selling fresh local produce. So tonight we're going to have chicken and rice, which I'm going to kind of like mix some onions and garlic in, and sauteed eggplant and bok choy and garlic. It's gonna be good. So I figured, since we do this all the time, rather than just showing you guys like the types of stuff we do when we go out, which is way less frequent than the types of stuff we do when we stay in, I thought it'd be cool to just show what it's like when we stay in. So that consists, of course, of us eating dinner, which is what we're going to kind of showcase tonight. Like, how do we cook in places that we rent? Like, one thing that we always do whenever we're booking Airbnbs, which is typically what we stay in, we make sure that the kitchen is fully equipped for us to cook in. So that means like it has a stove or at least a hot plate, and a refrigerator and a microwave and dishes, all that kind of stuff like that. So this place that we're staying in Vientiane for the month, it has everything that we need. We have one hot plate. I'm going to show you the setup in just a second, but I basically cook everything on a single hot plate. And if we want like baked potatoes, I do those in the microwave. And we actually had to buy a couple of things for this place. Like, it came with everything, like pots, pans, and cutlery. But the knives were pretty dull, so we bought a new knife, which only cost like, I don't know, the equivalent of 50 cents, I think, because we just needed it to last for the duration of our 1 month stay. And like a cutting board, and we actually bought a new pan too, because the pan here was fine, but it was kind of like the non-stick lining was like chipping a bit. So it was also pretty small, so we couldn't like cook larger things like chicken breast very easily, so we bought a new pan. Those types of things are just worth the investment if you're not going to be going out for every single meal. I mean, for us, we cook breakfast almost every single morning, and then we do eat in for dinner most of the time, and we eat out less frequently. So without further ado, I'm gonna show you kind of the setup here. So this is the rice cooking, and I'm doing it just the old school way in a skillet with some boiling water, and covering it rather than using something like a rice cooker. And then we have, these are our vegetables that we're going to have tonight. Like I said, eggplant and bok choy, some garlic there. And then I'll get the chicken out in just a few minutes and we'll cook that as well. So that's kind of like the setup for everything, and the rice is the only thing that's cooking so far, so I'll show you the progress as it goes on. So while the rice is cooking, the first thing I'm going to do is cut up the onions and garlic, and I'm going to like dice those up and then saute them in olive oil, and then I'm going to take the rice and put it back in that with the onions and garlic and kind of make like a sort of fried rice type of thing. So for those of you that cook, is this the route that you take for peeling garlic? Because I've seen so many different techniques for best ways to peel garlic, and this is one that I always stick with, and it works really well. Like smashing it with the skin on with a knife, and then it just easily, sometimes, peels right off. Alright, so now we've got all the onions and garlic sliced up. we're going to remove the rice from the pot and place that in a bowl temporarily. We're gonna saute these guys, and then we'll add the rice back in with some olive oil, kind of fry them up all together. So our rice, I just tested it. It tastes pretty soft, pretty good. So we're gonna go ahead and remove that so that we can cook our onions and garlic, given that I'm working with only one single pan and one single hot plate. All right, so now the rice is out of the pan, onions and garlic are sauteing in the pan, and we're about to start cutting up the bok choy and the eggplant to go in next. This is very sequential cooking because you do one thing at a time when you only have one hot plate. It's funny, when we first started traveling, like, I was thinking that there's no way I'm going to be able to just cook on like one burner, because like at our apartment before we started traveling I had 4, and I was like always cooking things like whenever I would make a meal simultaneously. And a lot of times in Airbnbs, like, you kind of get the bare basics of like the absolute essentials, and I just thought like it was going to be nearly impossible to cook, but now I feel like a master at cooking with bare essentials. Like, can cook with like close to nothing, and we make it work, and we really like it, and the meals come out like really good. So this is how the rice turned out, and as you can see, looks pretty good, but a little like dark brown crispies, which is like the garlic that cooked a little bit too long because I was focusing on the camera rather than on the food itself. But I just tested it. Tastes good. These are a little crispy, but adds a little bit of texture. I think it's still all right. I've never heard of this brand before, but I do always cook with extra virgin olive oil, just because it's typically the best. This happens to say that it's organic, but I do not know which standards it is certified organic by, because this is imported from... I'll get back to you on that. But yeah, so I use extra virgin olive oil to cook most of our food in. Back home, when I had a standalone kitchen that I was cooking in every night, then I would have other things, other oils, butter, stuff like that I would cook with. But typically my go-to is always extra virgin olive oil. So right now we are cooking the eggplant alone, because in this pan at least it takes a while for the eggplant to soften up. So I'm trying to like have them in an even layer on the pan, cooking with olive oil and just salt for now. And then once they get almost done, then we're going to add the bok choy, because that cooks in just like a couple of minutes. So eggplant takes a long time cooking by itself. Add the bok choy, cook together for a couple minutes, and then that should be good. Then sequential cooking, like I mentioned, this comes off the pan and the chicken goes in, and then we'll be done. Alright, the rice is done, the vegetables are done, now finally the chicken's on, and then we'll be good to eat. Normally it doesn't take that long to like make a meal like this. Oh, well, that was probably annoying. So that was the vent hood, because it was steaming up a little bit, but normally it takes maybe like 40 minutes to cook a meal like this. But with working the camera at the same time, it's probably taken, I don't know, a little over an hour. But anyways, almost done with the chicken. Once that's done, finally time to eat. We'll let you know how that is.
favorite part, which is the first few bites. Now, I'm just gonna show you kind of like how I attack the first bites. First, take my fork, then my knife. This is the one we got at D-Mart. I think it was about 8,000 kip, which is about $1 US. First, you wanna get a good piece of chicken. So you wanna cut that off. Then, I like blue cheese in my chicken. I kind of go through phases with this. Sometimes like I'll get tired of it, but I'm in a blue cheese phase right now. So I'm gonna get some out. Dip. Put your chicken in your mouth. Then grab some rice. It's really good. It's so good. It's very tasty. Now next, while you're still kind of chewing on the first bite, then you want to get a piece of eggplant and a bok choy. Don't necessarily have to get both of them at the same time. However, I do. Nailed it. So we're gonna go ahead and eat, because that's the last tip, is you gotta get it while it's hot. If you had guessed that I was the one that does the dishes, then you would be absolutely correct. I'm the dishwasher. And I'm fast. I can wash dishes so quickly. Not even funny.
All right, that concludes our first cooking video. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and we'll see you later.